Cancer care is dramatically improving. That's the good news. The question we have to ask ourselves, is it improving for everybody, or is it just going to improve for the people that can afford it?
Many patients, when they first get diagnosed, one of their first questions is, how much is this going to cost? So they already know that it's expensive, but they don't realize that it's going to happen over 2 benefit years, or like if they get diagnosed late in 1 benefit year and they have to meet their out-of-pocket in year 1 and then in year 2. And then some people, if their cancer is ongoing or recurs, they have to meet it again and again.
We need to make sure that everyone can get access to the drugs that we create. Right now in this country, we ration drugs, but we ration healthcare based on someone's ability to pay. I don't think that's right. I think that everybody should have access to quality health care, and I don't care whether we do that through the private sector or through the public sector. People who are sick, or people with chronic disease, or people who are struggling for their life should be able to get access to quality health care, including drugs, and we don't do that right now in this country.
Cancer medicines can have a transformative effect on patients' lives. They can extend life, produce long-term remissions, and sometimes even cure cancer. Affordability means different things depending on your perspective and role in the healthcare system. What we really need to focus on is affordability to the patient. As taking cancer medicines is not optional, asking a patient to shoulder the significant burden of copays or coinsurance creates barriers to treatment and hardships for families.
When I think about the current pricing system, it's kind of a surprise. When you're kind of in the experience of trying to access care, you don't necessarily know what the cost is. When you go to the drugstore, you know how much aspirin costs compared to Advil. You can't necessarily do the same thing for physician-administered drugs like those that are in oncology. So people really need more access to information so they can make better decisions alongside with their physicians.
Drug prices are designed to make money for drug companies. They're not designed to get those medications in the hands of the people who always need them. We've got wonderful cancer researchers in this country. They're a great asset. But they too want to make sure that when they work on a drug, when they find a cure, when they find something that improves people's lives, that it gets in the hands of everyone that needs it. And we're still a distance from that.
As a society, we didn't sit down and come up with our ideal system of what it would look like to both encourage companies to innovate in new pharmaceuticals and also make sure that patients have access to those pharmaceuticals. The different pieces of the system came into being at different times as a result of different messy political compromises, and oftentimes something that policymakers do in one part of the system has an unintended consequence elsewhere.
There is a lot unjust with the current pricing system, and I think that's the most unjust part is a layperson really doesn't truly understand how their benefits are going to work. Then another unjust part is the fact that some cancer drugs, if you get them at your doctor's office or in a hospital infusion center, they're covered under your medical benefits. If you're taking an oral drug, that's covered under your pharmaceutical benefits, and those are all different. So you have to learn now too. Another thing that's unjust is the fact that we don't take care of our elders as well as we should, and their benefits are completely and totally different than the commercial benefits. So even if they have learned how their benefits are gonna work while they were in the workforce, then when they transition into Medicare, they work even different.
The way we pay for drugs is screwed up. The most important element of your care should be paid out of pocket, when you need it the most. The amount that we spend on cancer drugs as a percentage of cancer care has gone up. But at the same time, the amount that we spend on cancer care as a percentage of total healthcare spending has remained the same. How is that possible? It's because the new medicines are freeing up a lot of the stuff that didn't work, the surgery and who wants to have part of their body hacked off to stop cancer? So we've freed up a lot of unnecessary, unproductive things. But that's exactly the point. We should be doubling down on that and that investment with better analytics and better cost alignment to make it possible, and stay out of this whole notion that the government can somehow set the right price for a medicine.
The current system was constructed from policy decisions. Nothing about what we do in cancer, how it's paid for, who bears the cost, how big those costs are, none of it is due to immutable forces of nature. The only thing that is related to nature is the fundamental biologic challenge of cancer and how hard it is to find treatments that work. But everything else, how much it costs a patient to go to the doctor and how much the insurer pays that doctor, and therefore how much insurance premiums cost for the patient, the cost of a drug in the pharmacy, how much a patient pays is a product of policy, how much the insurer pays is a product of policy. You only need to look at those same drugs in Europe to see it's not the drugs that have a fixed price. They can cost half as much in France or Germany or Italy as they do here, exact same medicines, essentially. It's just that the Europeans have made different policy decisions which cause those prices to be different.
Part of the reason we've made progress in treating cancer is because we reimbursed it so generously. And so what it did is it created incentives for companies to run clinical trials and the like. I mean, for example, if you look globally, tuberculosis kills as many people around the world as dementia does. But there are far more research going into dementia because dementias and Alzheimer's are illnesses that Americans and wealthy countries deal with, and tuberculosis tends to afflict patients in lower income countries who can't pay as much. So the result of this is that you have to understand that the innovation, perversely, we paid too much for our cancer drugs, but we've also made progress as a result. And the challenge is, how do we continue to make progress while keeping the drugs affordable? And I think the answer to that is to provide generous insurance that would both reward the innovators, but not allow them to make profits that some might consider excessive for not doing any good.
Too many cancer patients face financial burdens, and these come from a variety of sources, including medicines, hospital visits, diagnostics, and physician services. There are also other practical expenses, such as transportation and child care. Costs for other components of cancer care are also growing rapidly, and unlike new medicines, they are not rigorously assessed for value. A successful treatment may actually help lower healthcare costs over time, replacing or preventing the need for more costly medical interventions, such as hospitalizations. A good example is our medicine Gleevec, which is a life-changing medicine that transformed chronic myeloid leukemia from a once fatal condition into a manageable chronic disease. Today, 9 out of 10 CML patients have a near normal lifespan.
If we want to fix the affordability problem, we all have to do something about it. We need to be willing to say to drug companies that we expect you to both innovate and provide affordability. The best industries in the country are able to continuously innovate and bring down the costs. We need to have the same expectation from our healthcare system. And there's not one party who's to blame. We have a number of people in the healthcare system that exist based upon the current system and how the current system works. If we want to change that, we need everybody's participation.
I haven't really seen a successful model yet for addressing the cost of cancer care. The challenge is that we are allergic to setting prices in the US. Here's the essential problem. If you say drug companies and hospitals and doctors can charge whatever the market will bear, then insurance premiums will rise because those entities are all fundamentally monopolists at some level. And once insurance premiums rise, people will not be able to afford their insurance, or the insurers will make products that push more and more cost onto sick people, and then they won't be able to afford their care even if they do have insurance. And that's because you've mandated insurance coverage onto a system where prices can rise as high as the monopolists want. If you flip it around and you say, we're going to let patients bear their own costs and buy insurance on the market if they can afford it, you end up with what we have, which is being the only Western country with any meaningful number of people lacking insurance and people going bankrupt even if they have insurance. The allergy against realizing, acknowledging that pricing in our system will always be out of whack if we try to use market forces, prevents us from doing anything rational in terms of ensuring widespread access, affordability, and a robust delivery system.
Some of the value-based purchasing models, tying payments to outcomes, there are some regulatory authorities around the world that do it, but they also don't value care in the way that Americans do. Like if you look at the United Kingdom, which is held up as one of the societies that, you know, where they have national health insurance and they have this sense of solidarity, people are starting to buy private insurance as an outlet because they're not providing the level of service that people want. And I think in Singapore, they've done a good job using insurance design to try and get people to make the right choices. But when it comes to cancer care, you know, no one has gotten it right. And actually, the US has the best outcomes around the world. We do better than any other country in treating cancer. And what we don't want to do is disrupt that in the interests of just saying we have to cut costs. People focus a lot on, they say, well, life expectancy is France is better than the US, and they only spend half the per person amount on healthcare. And so the right way to think about that comparison is to say, once you get sick, once you get diagnosed with cancer, what country would you rather be in? And we actually looked at these data comparing the EU with the United States, and we've done better on survival, and our trends are better. And so, you know, and that's why people come to the US to get care. We don't want to screw that up. So, you know, if you're skeptical about politics and the state of where things are, at least take some solace in that they're moving slowly. And part of the reason is a lot of what we do is right.
Novartis shares society's goal of better and more affordable health care for all. However, the pharmaceutical industry cannot address the issue of rising healthcare costs alone. We at Novartis stand ready to partner with stakeholders across the entire system to understand how to deliver the most value to patients. In value-based healthcare, all stakeholders are incentivized to deliver the best possible outcomes for patients, healthcare systems, and society. Novartis is contributing to society's shift to value-based healthcare by focusing our R&D efforts on unmet need and outcomes that matter. We will consistently assess the value of our innovative medicines based on the value they deliver across the 4 pillars: clinical, patient, healthcare system, and societal value. We also work with partners to measure and improve patient outcomes in diseases where we have expertise. By working together among industry, governments, healthcare providers, and the patient community, we can make treatment more accessible and healthcare more sustainable, while securing future medical innovation.
You know, I think all of us have a role in taking action. In fact, for me, and particularly in the work that we do at FASTERCURES, one of the most troubling statistics is only 3% of the American population participates in clinical trials. If one of the most important things that we all can do, not just to have an affordable system, but also to have treatments and cures on the market that help everyone, we all have to find a way to be engaged in the research process differently. That could be in enrolling in a clinical trial, or it could be being part of studies like the NIH's All of Us study that is enrolling patients all over the country. And so being part of the clinical research process is something that we can all do, and I hope that we can all work towards being part of that research process moving forwards.